hopes are high that South Korea and the UAE will continue to produce greater achievements together, such as through cooperation on additional nuclear power plants in the UAE and joint expansion in the industry overseas. The leaders of the two countries voiced these ambitions while wrapping up President Yoon's state visit to Abu Dhabi. This year's World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland officially kicked off on Monday. Under the slogan, Cooperation in a Fragmented World, the annual event brings together global leaders in politics, business, and finance to discuss a variety of global challenges, including the Ukraine crisis and climate change. And the indoor mask mandate may be lifted after the Lunar New Year holiday here in the country. Detailed discussions on lifting the measure will begin today. President Yoon Suk-yeol paid a visit to the Barakah nuclear power plant on day 3 of his 4-day state visit to the UAE. At South Korea's first nuclear energy fleet built overseas, Yoon called for additional nuclear power cooperation with the UAE and joint advances into third country markets, likely with the UK in sight. Our Presidential Office Bureau Chief Moon Ga-young has our top story.
The Barakah nuclear power plant in Abu Dhabi's far western desert near Saudi Arabia is touted as a monumental symbol of South Korea and the UAE's special strategic partnership. South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol arrived at the site Monday afternoon, greeted by his Emirati counterpart Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan. Together with Lee Jae-young of Samsung Group, Chung Wi-sun of Hyundai Motor Group, and the UAE Deputy Prime Minister Sheikh Mansour, the two leaders witnessed the completion of Unit 3 and the progress made on Unit 4 of the 4 reactors made by South Korea. Highlighting its enormous significance in the two countries' nuclear power cooperation, Mr. Yoon called for greater collaboration.
President Yoon highlighted that now is the time for the two countries to further our partnership to greater heights in delivering additional cooperation in the UAE and in making headway into third country nuclear markets together.
Now, this would include cooperation in nuclear fuel and small reactors, and joint advances currently with the UK market in sight. Mindful of the previous administration's attempt to move South Korea away from nuclear power.
It's true that it's been difficult for South Korea-UAE relations to make visible progress in the last 5 years due to Seoul's nuclear phase-out policy.
Yoon's office made sure to underline this administration's commitment to nuclear power as it works to finish the first nuclear power plant in the Arabian Peninsula. To that end, Presidents Yoon and Sheikh Mohammed also adopted a joint declaration on climate action, underscoring their collective commitment to confronting climate change.
청정 에너지 협력까지 더해지면 양국의 에너지 안보 강화는 물론 글로벌 에너지 시장의 안정성 제고에도 기여할 것입니다.
Observers say President Yoon's embrace of nuclear power provides a guarantee of sorts that South Korea remains invested in servicing the Barakah plant and in line for lucrative maintenance contracts and future projects with the UAE. Moon Ga-young, Arirang News.
Following a summit between the leaders of South Korea and the UAE, a joint statement has been adopted. The two countries have agreed to work together to tackle climate change and strengthen cooperation in multiple areas. Also, an additional 24 MOUs were signed during a business forum, bringing the total from President Yoon's trip to 48. Our Kim Do-yeon is traveling with the president and follows this report from Abu Dhabi.
South Korea and the UAE have issued a joint statement articulating the agreements made by Presidents Yoon Suk-yeol and Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan during their bilateral summit on Sunday, where the two decided to further develop their special strategic partnership. The statement released on Monday shows the two leaders' agreement to strengthen cooperation in 4 key areas, namely conventional and clean energy, including the peaceful use of nuclear energy, economy, investment, and defense technology, and expanding further to space development, emerging industries, and culture. Also reaffirmed in the statement are their shared goal of the complete denuclearization of North Korea and promoting peace in the Middle East. The presidential office explained that this also further solidifies the $30 billion investment already announced by the UAE.
Such decision to invest in South Korea has been specified not in an MOU, but in the joint declaration. This clearly confirms the UAE's trust in South Korea's economy.
President Yoon, as he took center stage at the South Korea-UAE Business Forum, also expressed his hopes for a new phase in the bilateral ties.
유해의 투자와 한국의 첨단 산업 역량이 시너지를 이루어서 세계 시장에서 많은 성과가 창출되기를 기대합니다. 그리고 해내야 합니다.
Also at the forum, 24 more MOUs were announced, among them 6 for the energy sector and others including industries such as the metaverse. And that brings the total number of MOUs signed during the state visit to 48. While he emphasized that the main focus of this trip is searching for solutions to the current economic challenges, he gave the credit where it was due as he dined with business leaders traveling with him.
특히 모하메드 대통령께서 한국에 300억 불 투자를 결정하면서 어떤 상황에서도 약속을 지키는 대한민국, 어떤 어려움이 있어도 계약을 이행하는 한국 기업을 언급했습니다. 이는 경제인 여러분들께서 일궈낸 성과라고 생각합니다.
His sales diplomacy isn't done yet, as he will attend the Dubai Future Forum to wrap up his state visit to UAE. Then he will head to Switzerland for the Davos Forum before heading home. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News, Abu Dhabi.
The World Economic Forum, also known as the Davos Forum, kicked off Monday with people from all sectors, including entertainment, politics, business, and academia, taking part to discuss pending global issues. Our Lee Seung-jae reports.
The 2023 World Economic Forum, widely known as the Davos Forum, returned in full form after 3 years of disruption caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Under the theme of cooperation in a fragmented world, the forum will run for 5 days, with some 2,700 political and business leaders from all around the world in attendance. This year, participants hope to restore international cooperation in a situation where countries' own national interests are being prioritized due to the pandemic and war in Ukraine. Prior to the start of the forum, its organizers presented the results of a survey containing economic prospects for 2023. An in-depth interview of 50 economists from around the world showed that 2/3 of them said they expect the global economy to enter a recession this year. Global inflation is also expected to continue. On the first day of the forum, demonstrations by civic groups around the world against the Davos Forum also began. This includes scores of climate activists who gathered in the Swiss town to protest against the role of big oil companies at the World Economic Forum, demanding stronger action to tackle the climate crisis. Meanwhile, watchers have also raised concerns over the lack of participation from leaders of major economies, as German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is the only group of 7 leaders attending the summit. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
North Korea is set to carry out a key parliamentary meeting today. Now, this is one of the regime's biggest events of the new year, as the meeting overlooks policy tasks and state budget issues for 2023. For more, we're joined by Jacques Veslot. He's the host of the NK News podcast. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Sure. Welcome to the program. I really hate to say this, but North Korea has been rather quiet in terms of provocations since their drone intrusion into Seoul last month and also the New Year's missile launch. What do you think the North has been up to lately?
Well, I don't think that Kim Jong-un wakes up every morning wondering how he can annoy or provoke people in South Korea. That said, it does seem likely that there will be some kind of large military parade coming up soon, because satellite photographs have shown that military equipment has been mobilized around the medium training ground near Pyongyang. And that could be for the February 8th 75th anniversary of the founding of the Korean People's Army. North Korea actually has two different dates that it celebrates for the founding of the army, and one of them is February the 8th, so there could be a big parade there. Apart from that, on New Year's Day, a lot of people in North Korea traveled to statues of Kim Il-sung and Kim Jong-il to lay flowers at the feet of those statues. That was reported by North Korean state media. And it was also reported that factories and power stations had not only fulfilled, but exceeded their daily production quotas.
Well, personally, I'm taking the silence as a good sign for now, but North Korea is also set to hold a key parliamentary meeting today, the Supreme People's Assembly. This is when the regime discusses policy tasks and state budget issues for the new year. What is expected to top the agenda this year?
Yeah, as you say, it's possible the Supreme People's Assembly will meet today. Now, it's possible that Kim Jong-un may give a speech, but given that this comes only 3 weeks after their big end-of-year Korean Workers' Party plenum that they had just before New Year's Day, I don't think that there'll be too much that's new that wasn't already covered in that plenum. And that plenum specifically mentioned 12 different policy goals that they wanted to accomplish by the end of this year. And those goals focus on mainly economic issues and trying to raise the standard of living in Korea. They're quite familiar goals. We've probably heard things before, an emphasis on things like agriculture, fertilizer and fishing. And they had a big rally in the May 1st Stadium early this year, showing off the new slogans and posters to trumpet those goals. And those goals, we don't yet know any specific details, so they may be coming out of the Supreme People's Assembly meeting. But also science and technology have been put forward as major drivers of the economy this year. And then they will, of course, talk about expanding North Korea's defense, specifically their nuclear armament. And they mentioned at the plenum that there's two goals now. The primary goal is a defense mechanism, and then the secondary goal of the nuclear program is a retaliatory strike, which it says will not be a defense.
Right. And mind you, the next question really heavily depends on the attendance of the leader, Kim Jong-un. In the past, Kim has used the annual meeting as an opportunity to send messages to Seoul and Washington. Because I remember back in 2021, Kim expressed a willingness to restore the then cut off inter-Korean communication lines at the meeting. Now, can we expect something like that, a meaningful message this time?
I must say I'm not very hopeful at this time. I don't see any sign yet that Pyongyang is particularly interested in engaging with the rest of the world. In fact, just recently, Russian media reported rumors that the Russian embassy in Pyongyang may close its doors because the diplomats who've been stuck there for 3 years since North Korea went into the self-imposed COVID lockdown early in 2020 want to go back home. Now, that's just one sign, but it's a sign among many that North Korea isn't particularly interested in engaging the world. Often, Kim Jong-un sends messages in a non-verbal way, and so I expect that this year, maybe not this week, but certainly this year, there'll be more missile tests, perhaps some missiles that use the brand new solid fuel motor that was tested recently, and maybe even a 7th nuclear test. So I really fear that we may be entering a time when the two Koreas are not talking to each other, but that they keep raising the tension up through tit-for-tat drone flights or matching a missile launch with a competing missile launch. And that carries the risk that by raising it up, it's very hard to de-escalate it, which could lead to a mistake or a miscalculation. Now, I hope I'm wrong, because I live here in Korea. I'm not just watching the Korean Peninsula from a far-off place, so I hope that cooler heads will prevail on both sides of the demilitarized zone and that good advice will be taken.
I hope you're wrong too, but if the meeting is being carried out at the moment, I'm sure we'll have some updates by tomorrow morning, right?
I would imagine so, yes.
Right.
Keep watching the news.
Right. All right. Thank you for your insight this morning.
Thank you for having me.
The bodies of both South Korean victims of the tragic Nepal plane crash have been found and transported to a local hospital. According to Seoul's Foreign Ministry on Monday, a South Korean consul visited the hospital and checked the bodies in person. The victims were verified through an assessment of their belongings and are reported to be a man in his 40s surnamed Yoon and his teenage son. The bodies will be transported to Kathmandu, where they will undergo testing in order to be officially identified. Meanwhile, authorities have also found the airplane's black box, which they hope will give some insights into the cause of the tragedy. South Korean health authorities are set to discuss whether to end the rule on indoor mask wearing today. The indoor mask mandate is the last remaining antivirus measure left here in the country. On Monday, the head of the National Advisory Committee on Infectious Disease Crisis Response, Chung Ki-seok, said South Korea's infection trend has shown significant signs of subsiding, and lifting the indoor mask mandate is not too far away. In fact, watchers say the mandate could be lifted after the upcoming Lunar New Year holiday. Jung also said he expects the infection trend to stay at around the current level, even after restrictions are lifted. In line with the Yoon administration's education reforms, the government met with the ruling party at the National Assembly, where lawmakers urged the Education Ministry to thoroughly prepare for a new elementary after-school pilot program. Our National Assembly correspondent Han Sung-woo reports.
South Korea's ruling party has requested the nation's education officials to come up with a thorough plan to implement President Yoon Suk-yeol's vision of a more integrated educational environment for school children that's less burdensome on parents. The reforms being pushed include merging preschool daycare education with kindergarten and installing so-called dilbom after-school programs designed to keep elementary school kids under care and learning until 8 p.m. while their parents are still at work.
The program's aimed at providing elementary school students with care and high-quality after-school education. Should both reforms succeed, parents will be assured that their children are in good hands until they graduate. It's essentially the government taking on the responsibility of educating our youth.
Right after discussions with the Ministry of Education at the National Assembly on Monday, the head of the Policy Committee of the People Power Party, Sung Il-jong, told reporters that the Yoon administration's also looking forward to the project raising the country's extremely low birth rate.
We asked the ministry to direct the policy towards also resolving South Korea's low birth rate and the issue of careers interrupted by childcare obligations.
The Education Ministry is planning to launch a pilot version of the program at about 200 elementary schools in 4 regions this year, before going nationwide by 2025. As part of it, a variety of after-school activities, including sports, music, art, and even artificial intelligence software taught by professionals, will be offered. Han Sung-woo, Arirang News.
The renowned South Korean photographer Oh Hein-kuhn is known for his crude, raw portraits of middle-aged women known in Korean as ajumma. Well, he's back with a new exhibition here in Seoul, this time along with new pictures taken of younger people. Our Kim Jung-sil went there and files this report.
Visitors to Art Seonje Center in downtown Seoul are greeted by the faces of middle-aged Korean women. In the Korean language, a woman of about this age will often be addressed as ajumma. Historically, the term is neutral, but it can cause offense because of the assumptions it makes and the pejorative way in which it's often used. Oh Hein-kuhn made portraits of hundreds of ajummas in the late 90s, a time when their lives of sacrifice and hard work were not recognized by society. He wanted to take their pictures because in many of their faces, he saw solitude and loneliness. Now, 17 years later, Oh's pictures are more widely accepted as art and have made ajummas more visible as people. This time, along with the ajummas, he's displaying pictures of young people too. On the 3rd floor is a collection called Left Face, and the subjects of the photos are in their 20s and 30s. I asked him why he chose to take pictures of millennials and Generation Z.
The key word while working on this project was ambivalent. I think the anxiety of the younger generation these days has more to do with ambivalence than in past generations, so I tried to capture that.
Oh said these days the lines are blurred between young men and women, and it's hard to tell if someone is a banker, a student, or a tattoo artist. The younger generation, he said, are hard to define, and that's what's special about them. And indeed, the visitors to his exhibition include many young people around the age of his subjects.
I think self-identity is one of the most important concepts in contemporary art. Younger people, as they wander around trying to find out who they are, shouldn't be anxious. They can be free while in search of themselves, and I think this exhibition suggests that, and it's a positive thing.
The exhibition Left Face runs until January 29th here at Art Sunja Center in Jongno, Central Seoul. Kim Jung-sil, Arirang News.
For a look at the news from around the world, we now turn to our Matthew Ashley joining us here in the studio. Good morning, Matthew.
Good morning, Dami.
All right, let's start with what's happening over the Baltic Sea as a German and Russian military plane came into close contact.
Well, that's right. According to a statement by Russia's Ministry of Defense, a Russian Su-27 fighter jet was scrambled to escort a German P-3 Orion maritime patrol plane. Now, this in order to prevent a potential border breach, as Moscow claims the German Navy plane on Monday local time was approaching its border. Now, the ministry added that the German reconnaissance plane was then escorted until it turned away, and that all Russian fighters' movements were conducted according to international rules. The incident comes after Germany agreed to increase its military aid to Ukraine by sending more armored vehicles to the war-torn country. Shifting our focus to Italy now, as the country's most notorious mafia boss has been arrested after 30 years on the run. Known as Diabolic, Matteo Messina Denaro was taken into custody in the city of Palermo in Sicily on Monday local time. Now, Denaro was one of the heads of the Cosa Nostra family and was both Italy's and Europol's most wanted man. He had been a fugitive since 1993. Up until now, the 60-year-old has received several life sentences in absentia over several murders and bombings. Most notably, Denaro was convicted for fatal bombings in Milan, Florence and Rome, and 2 separate murders of anti-mafia prosecutors. Moving on to space-related news, as SpaceX has completed a secretive launch mission for the U.S. Space Force. Using a Falcon Heavy rocket, the launch from Kennedy Space Center in Florida was made Sunday evening local time. Though the finer details of the mission, dubbed USSF-67, are unknown, the payload is a military communications satellite and 5 smaller payloads. The Continuous Broadcast Augmenting SATCOM-2 military satellite is set to enter geostationary orbit about 35,700 kilometers above Earth. Leaders for Space Force said the satellite will facilitate, quote, communications relay capabilities for senior leaders and commanders. Considering the sensitive nature of the mission, the majority of the live stream focused on the touchdown of the rocket's reusable booster.
Good morning. It's another freezing start to the day with cold wave alerts expanded to more parts of the country. Feels like temperatures are about -10 degrees Celsius here in Seoul, so please bundle up tight. The cold snap will ease a bit for the next couple of days, then even colder air surges in for this Seollal holiday. On Saturday, we'll see icy cool temperatures, which are set to stay with us through the 4-day holiday. Now back to today's forecast. Seoul sees a high of 1 degree, Daejeon topping out at 3 degrees Celsius. A couple of degrees higher than yesterday, but it will feel like it's sub-zero all day in central parts of the country. But southern provinces will see highs that are similar to yesterday. Now cloudy skies turn brighter in the afternoon before getting gray again with light snow in the forecast overnight. Central regions will be seeing light snow of over 1 centimeter overnight, and due to the freezing temperatures, it could cause icy roads. With that in mind, here's a look at the weather conditions around the globe.
That's all we have for this morning here at New Day at Arirang, but do stay with us for more updates throughout the day. Thanks for watching.